Welcome everyone to Getting Started with ForeFlight. In this webinar, we're going to give you an overview of the app, walk you through how to set up your aircraft, and we'll also look at several key parts of the app that you'll use every time you plan a flight. And then we'll also walk through filing your first flight plan. Our presenters for today are Kendall Stovall and Austin Thurmond. Guys, go ahead and introduce yourselves.
Thanks, Jay. I'm Kendall. I've been a member of the pilot support team here at ForeFlight for about a year and a half. I've also been flying in GA all over the country for 9 years and instructing for about half that time. And Austin,
hey,
what about
everybody.
yourself?
I'm Austin Thurmond. I do live here in Austin, Texas. I've been on the pilot support team just over 2 years and flying since 2018. I picked up my instrument last October, and it's been a lot of fun flying and getting to talk to pilots that use ForeFlight.
Awesome. No, you're good. Awesome. Thanks, guys. On the agenda for today's webinar, we're going to start by looking at how to navigate ForeFlight, kind of giving you an overview of how things are laid out and where you can find the different features that you're going to be using. Next, we'll take a look at downloads and settings, making sure that you have the data that you need for the regions that you fly in, and making sure that you don't have too much data for regions that you don't. We'll also show you how to find a few key features that a lot of people like to adjust in their settings. Next, we'll set up your first aircraft. We'll show you how to walk through the aircraft profile, and then we will use that aircraft to start planning our first flight on the Maps tab and the Flights tab, and we'll go all the way down to showing you how to file that flight plan. After that, we'll look at some in-flight features in ForeFlight that will greatly enhance your situational awareness. And then we'll take a look at post-flight features as well, including track logs and our logbook. After that, Kendall and Austin will give us their best tips and tricks on what they like to use when flying with ForeFlight. With that, let's get started. Austin and Kendall, over to you guys.
Let's do it. So we're going to go ahead and hop through a little bit of app navigation here. So this is what you're going to see when you open ForeFlight Mobile. It's going to open to your Maps page. And at the bottom here, you have different tabs that you can tap and select, and it'll take you to different features of ForeFlight. So we're on the Maps page right now. Click on Airports. It'll take you there. Aircraft, weight and balance, things like that. I don't have time to go through each of these today, but tapping these will take you to different parts of the app. I do want to point you over to our Documents tab. And there's quite a bit of information in here when you're getting started with ForeFlight. So on the left side, you have your imported drives to put in different custom content, PDFs, whatever you like. FAA drive, that'll take you different parts. You got the terminal procedures, flight charts, things like that. If you open up the ForeFlight drive, that'll take you to where you can find our pilot's guide. It's a 700-page document. I highly recommend poking through it. That shows all the different ins and outs of ForeFlight, and we also break down each different sub guide that we have. So logbook, weight and balance, passenger, everything you could think is right there. Now at the top, we have our search bar. So let's say I want to pull up the filing guide. So we go search, put in filing, and we can select it. There's the top one there, and it opens up our ForeFlight filing guide. So pretty cool tips and tricks. Tap each one. On the right side, if you go into more, this will take you into more tabs that you can look at that aren't included at the bottom of the Maps page. Do you want to know, so just to the left of, if you select more, to the left is what we call a dynamic tab. And any tab that you open here from this menu will put it to the left of that more. So if I want track logs there open, I tap track logs, and that puts it to the dynamic tab position. If you want to edit the order of the tabs that you see at the bottom of the Maps page, you just go edit tab order and say I want to move, let's put flights a little higher. I want to see that every time I open up the maps. Select there between aircraft, weight, and balance, select save, and there you go. Flights will now always be at the bottom of ForeFlight Mobile. So it's a good function there. Kendall, what do you got?
So I'll take a look at the download sections with you guys. So if we tap over here to more, and at the top you have downloads, so I'll go ahead and select that. So you kind of have a few different options here. Starting off, we're going to look at the data section. So data settings include things like taxi diagrams, terminal procedures, IFR and VFR charts. And then through this, we only want to select any of the charts and diagrams or even just maps that we fly in the area for. So as you can kind of see here on like helicopters, for instance, I kind of deselected that. I don't fly helicopters. So anything like that, if I tap back to downloads after I've selected the settings that I want to work with, we can go into the region settings. So region settings include things like all the different United States, if you happen to be flying in Europe or Canada. So you can select all the different states that you're in. So right now I do have quite a few selected, but if you happen to be in our great state of Texas over here, we can go quite a while without managing to exit our state. So for the most part, whenever I fly in Texas, the only ones that I will have are Louisiana or maybe New Mexico. So that being said, once we've selected any of our states or countries that we want to continue to fly in, down here at the very bottom, in normal case, the download section right here would be illuminated, meaning that once we tap that, downloads would begin for any of the things that we have previously selected. And then next, we're going to kind of take a look at another option in the more down here on the right-hand corner, and we'll tap settings. So in our settings area up here at the very top, you can see that we have a brightness selector, and we can change the brightness additional to the app theme. So right off the bat, you can kind of tell that Austin and I's iPads are a little bit different. He has the light setting selected currently on his iPad.
Correct setting.
The correct setting. He has the He's exactly right. It's all by personal preference. So I currently have the dark theme on mine. So it just changes ultimately how your whole system looks. You also have the filter setting up here at the top, similar to documents. So if you would like to just see what general preferences we have in the app. So that are things like alerts, units, allowing your app to sleep. We can go ahead and just have all of our preferences right here rather than having to skim through all of these. Another great one for here and that I'll be using here in a little bit is the multiple layer selections. I'll talk a little bit more about that, but for right now, I just want to make sure that that is enabled. I'll hit X to kind of clear that out again and just tap close. So we go back to the original page that I was on. And I'll let Austin talk to y'all a little bit about aircraft.
Sweet. Yeah, so that's a good little background on the app and where to find different features and things. So with that, we're going to set up an aircraft. So we'll go back to, here's the map page we're at previously. So we'll tap on the aircraft tab. And we're completely blank, so let's add an aircraft. So we're going to tap that plus sign in the top. We'll put in a tail number. We'll do November 123 for today. We're going to go into aircraft type. Let's put in a 172 Sierra model. And just for today's demonstration, I'm going to use the weight and balance template. We'll show you how that works here in just a second. So that'll populate your category. You just put in your aircraft color, home airport if you'd like. And then scroll a little bit further down to the performance section. So we're going to add in some performance profiles. Select that, add basic performance profile. You can give it a name. Just for today, I'm going to type in webinar. And on ForeFlight, to get your en route time, your fuel burn, things like that, all we need is the true airspeed and your cruise fuel burn. So for today, let's do in a 172, 110 true. Close that. And say we're burning in cruise about 8 gallons an hour. Tap 8, close. Now, if you want a little bit more accurate profile of the flight that you're running, you can put in the climb and descent profile. So the numbers that you're seeing in flight, you can put them in here and it'll give you a little bit more accurate fuel and time numbers there. So, but just for today, we're going to do our cruise information. We're going to scroll down a bit and select Make Default. And this will just, anytime we make a flight, it'll by default select November 123. So we're going to head back. We're good to go there. And we're going to, at the bottom there, just select over to weight and balance. Now we're not going to go too deep in the weeds here about how to set up a weight and balance. But you select create. And remember, we selected a aircraft profile that had the pre-built weight and balance profiles. So there's a 4-seat arrangement that will basically pre-build the stations and arm lengths for you. Or you can create your own blank profile, which will give you the arms and station, or you build out the arms that you need in stations.
And then we also have a couple of webinars going in more detail for the weight and balance. We have a fully specialized one. And then if any of y'all were in a few months ago, Alex and I also did a webinar that included a full setup of an aircraft as well as weight and balance. So definitely check those out.
Yeah, it was a good one. Don't miss that one. So now we got our aircraft set up. Let's head to maps. Kendall's got some comments there.
Before we get into that, There we go. Let me turn my mic on here. Before we get into that, got a quick question that came in for Kendall regarding downloads versus packing. If I'm planning a flight, let's say from Dallas to Miami, if I've only got Texas charts downloaded, but I'm going all the way to Florida, what does packing do? Does that give me all the documents I'll need for that flight?
Sure. So basically, pack is one of my favorite features. Ultimately, what happens with pack is it creates an envelope. I'll kind of give y'all an example real quick. Let's type in Austin. And then let's see if I can, we'll say ATL, Atlanta. Say we're going all the way to Atlanta. So ultimately, anything that PAC does, if I don't have any charts for Alabama or anything like that, it creates this 20 nautical mile envelope surrounding this flight, which will start to download any of the NOTAMs, fuel prices, any of the different maps, sectionals that happen to be in this route that you just don't normally download. And that way, if you do happen to have to make extra fuel stops, like I'm sure you will if we're flying Cessnas like we do, you will have all that information for whatever particular airport you happen to divert to. Sorry, that was Austin setting up that new plane.
All good.
All right.
All right. Go ahead and take it away. Sorry, on the next section.
No worries. All right. So we're going to take a look on this map section now that I'm kind of on it. So down here at the bottom, I have tapped on maps. And if we go up here to the top left corner, I'm going to take a look at the layer selector. So currently I do just have the aeronautical layer turned on, which I would highly suggest y'all keep on. It is a fantastic dynamic map layer that was provided to us by Jepson. It has things like global airspace. It's a great tool for not only VFR flying, but IFR flying. And it has things like our airports, airspace, different waypoints, and even highways. I do have some things here in the background that you kind of take a look at. And then looking at the different layers that we have on the left-hand side here is an icing. So I will turn on our icing layer and kind of zoom out just a hair, just because when I was messing with that flight earlier, is we have a legend here at the bottom. So all of the different icing layers start with the lowest level of blue is going to be the lightest version of ice, all the way up to severe, which is the darkest level. We can also press this play button here at the bottom, so you can kind of tell up there by Arkansas how the ice slowly disappears over the next 16 hours. I'll go ahead and hit pause. And I'll tap that layer selector again. And we will also hit the traffic. So this is internet traffic that we have provided by FlightAware. And I'm going to kind of zoom in just a hair, let's say close to Dallas. And we'll let this generate for just a second. And whenever we have our traffic layer turned on, we'll be able to see different flights that are flying around for whatever reason.
The joys of doing it live.
Yeah, I was going to say the joys of doing it live. I'm not able to pull up any traffic on this layer. And that's okay. Normally we'll actually have a couple of little blue arrows that are hanging out, just like Austin's iPad. Austin, do you do me a favor and just go ahead and tap on one of those little airplanes for me? Awesome. So it'll give you a different tail number, the altitude, currently what it's flying at, all of that good stuff. It happens to be Spirit Wings or Spirit Airlines right there.
There you go.
Fantastic. If you'll pass back over to me really quick, I'll turn off my traffic layer. A couple of the other layers that we have on here is NOTAMs and TFRs. Those are relatively self-explanatory. We always want to kind of keep track of those whenever we do a flight plan. You can tap to select what's currently going on that NOTAM. Currently, this is unmanned aircraft scheduled. It'll give you all the information there at the bottom and the times in which this is effective. I'm going to go close that and go back into my layer selector. So down here, as we kind of scroll a little bit further, we have more weather options. So flight category, if you want to take a look at all the VFR airports and you're looking for some IFR, maybe we'll go a little bit towards a little bit south from Dallas. And one of our other favorite features is fuel. So this shows our active fuel prices. What's great about that is that you guys as pilots who use our app are able to select whatever fuel from that airport is. select whatever fuel from that airport is. And then once we have the FBO pulled up, we can tap on it. And down here at the bottom right, you can actually see update fuel prices. So once you guys hit that, if it happens to be a different price at the airport that you're currently at, you can submit that and it'll be reviewed by someone on our directory team who's able to publish that new updated fuel price. Yes.
Got a quick question. Got a few questions actually before we move on from the layer selector. You mentioned the icing layer, and there have been a few people asking. I don't see it. That is a Pro Plus feature. Sorry, we didn't mention that a second ago.
All right. Fuel selector flight category. All right, so as we kind of scroll along here at the top, the next thing we'll kind of take a look at is our flight plan box. So flight plan box can be toggled on and off. As you can see right there, it just dropped down for us. Austin's going to go a little bit more in depth in this in a little bit and start planning a flight for us. So I'll let that go back up for right now. Next, we have that gear. So that gear is map settings exclusively. As I kind of talked about earlier, one of the things that I turned on here just for some is the layer selector. So I was able to select multiple different layers of the map without that little drop down going on and off because I have multiple selections turned on. A couple of other fantastic features we have in here is, once again, we have brightness or inverting chart colors. We also have different aeronautical selecting layers, so I could turn on some helicopter airports or even different ports and things like that. One of my favorite features, and definitely something that I messed with whenever I was not working for ForeFlight, is I accidentally turned off our quick filters. So I'll do that for you right now. On the left-hand side of the page, you can see all of these little icons. I'm going to go ahead and turn off quick filters. So that gives you harder access to things like turning on the active airports or different airways, and also highways, being able to draw on there, and the track logs. Let's see. So going back up from our settings, Austin, do you have a few that you liked yourself?
I do. If I could chime in real quick, I got a couple quick map settings that I like. All right, so go back to mine. So one that I really like is the glide advisor. And so what this does, and I don't have a picture of it, but basically when you're flying and you have GPS data, it'll take your speed, winds aloft data, and actually build a ring around your aircraft when you're flying. And it'll show you just how much distance you can cover. So if you were to lose an engine, things like that, it just gives you options of where you can fly to. Really great one to have it on. The second one I like is the extended center lines. So here's my maps page here in ForeFlight Mobile. I created this route here from Austin Bergstrom up to McKinney near Dallas. And the extended center lines will actually, as it says, gives you the extended center line of the runways at that airport. So there it is leaving Austin. And there it is going into McKinney. So it gives you an idea of what you can expect as you're being vectored up to the airport through that Bravo. The last one I really like is the alerts menu. So we're going to click that gear icon on the maps page, go down to alerts. And we'll specifically go down to airspace and NOTAMs. We'll go, so this was a fairly recent one, right? It was 15.1, I think this was released.
Mm-hmm. That's correct.
Airspace alert types. You can go in here, and we have a full video on the full extent of the airspace alerts, but you can go select, deselect whichever airspace you do want to see. So I have the air traffic zone, military zone, TMZ zone turned off. So I just have, your basic Class A, B, Charlie and Delta airspaces on. So it's a great feature.
So kind of looking back here at the top, the next thing beyond the settings is synthetic vision. We'll talk a little bit more about that in the Inflight feature. Austin has a few things to say about Sentry.
Yeah, we'll talk about it here in a bit.
So I'm going to go ahead and skip that and move on to our instrument panel. So down here at the bottom, once I click this little instrument at the top, you will see a couple of different things pop up. So distance to next, Zulu time, and a few other things like that. So this will be accurate in flight. It'll be able to tell us what our current vertical speed is or anything else that you have selected down here. The great thing about this is that we can always change any of these little instruments that we have here just by tapping to select it. And as you can see, we have quite the number of things that we can change this to. So G meter, cabin pressure, rate of turn, all fantastic stuff. I'll go ahead and keep mine, or actually we'll move mine to track. So we'll create our current track as we have it right now. Moving on from our instrument panel, the next thing that we have is recent flights and favorites. So I'll go ahead and tap that. And it'll show me my most recent flights. So these are any flights that Austin and I, as we've been messing around prepping for this webinar, we have all of our recent flights that we've done in here. We can search them through that filter feature right there. And also I can tap favorites over here. So these are any flights that here I have favorited just as we've been experimenting. And once I click on this flight, it'll actually show us whatever distance and route that we had originally chose. So, any type of that. And we can also do the same thing for recent. So I can go ahead and click on that as well and it'll show us a different recent flight that we've done. So just in case y'all happen to pick an airport that you always wanted to go back to, that is always a possibility. And speaking of those flight plans, we're going to have Austin make one right now.
Let's go ahead and build one. That's what we're here for. So we're back on the maps page in ForeFlight Mobile. And this is how I build mine. You can do them from the flights tab, which we'll get to, or from the maps page here in the FPL box, which I prefer. So you tap on FPL at the top. My home airport's at a Lockhart, just south of Austin at 50 Romeo. So I know the identifier there. So we're going to tap in the box, do 50 Romeo, click the space bar. And it's a very popular spot here in Central Texas. So we're going to go to Fredericksburg. Now I know that the identifier out there is Tango 82. So you can go tap in Tango 82 space, and that will create your direct line from Lockhart out to Fredericksburg. Now I can hold that and drag it down. It'll delete it from the FPL box, which is a cool feature. Now say you can't remember the identifier of where you're going, but okay, you know the area you're going. So we find Tango 82 here. You can tap on it and go add to route from there. And it'll create the route for you. Open the FPL box again, and there it is. So as we were talking earlier, in the top left is the aircraft that you can select for this flight. Now you can have multiple different aircraft profiles listed in here. We only have the one, November 123, our trusty little 172 Sierra model. So we'll select that. Just below that is our performance profile selection. Now we have the webinar profile that we built set as default. You can build multiple performance profiles per aircraft. So if you have maybe a high performance one, say if you're wanting to get there a little bit quicker, you can select that. If you want to do a more economical route, you can select one for that. And it'll update your time en route, your fuel burn, all that, as you select the different profiles. So below that, we'll open our altitude advisor. At the bottom, you can select VFR or IFR altitudes and also westerly or easterly headings. So today, we're going to take our time. It's a nice day out, and we'll keep it. Let's see. Let's call it 35. That'll work. Sounds like a smooth ride to me. One thing I do want to point out is here, right to the left of in the FPL box next to clear. So say we get out to Fredericksburg, go to the airport diner there, have a great meal, heading back to Lockhart, you can just reverse your route. So now it has Tango 82 out to 50 Romeo. And it'll update your en route time, your arrival time, your winds aloft. Just give you that quick information. It'll update as you flip your route around. On the right side of the box, we'll start at the bottom. We have our ETD. Just for demonstration purposes here, I'll just select now, but you can select whatever ETD you'd like, whether it be in the future. You select now. To get the arrival time, so ETA, you will need to select an ETD for that flight. Right above that is our routes. So this is our route advisor. If you're planning on flying IFR, you can select an ATC cleared route, direct via Stonewall VOR. We're not going to get too much into that. We're doing VFR today. And just above the routes, we have procedures. So this is where you can add an approach. If the airport's big enough and it has an arrival or departure procedure, it'll be shown here. For VFR flying, we have traffic patterns. So it'll pull in the latest weather information, and it'll give you the best wind. So it looks like we're landing 3-2 in Fredericksburg today is the way to go. So you can select that. And you can get a straight-in approach, left traffic with 35-degree entry, cross midfield, however you'd like. And you can tap that, add it to your route, and it'll paint it on the maps page. All right, so now on the bottom right, we're going to look at the profile view.
And Profile is a Pro Plus performance feature, just so you guys are aware.
Very good point. Thank you. This is a Pro Plus. It's a great feature. This will give you a look and see what airspace you're going to be running into. So leaving here out of Lockhart, you can see we're going to fly above that Class Delta out of San Marcos. But say, hey, I just want to fly VFR. I don't want to mess with anybody today. So let's actually use this feature called Rubber Band. So you can grab the route and actually rubber band it around the delta. So you tap and hold it, you drag it to where you want to go, and you select the coordinates, and it'll actually add it to your route. So now you can see in our profile view that takes it out of our airspace is no longer in our route there. We're clear, good to go. Right between that delta and the Charlie airspace of Austin Bergstrom. So it's a great way to see different obstacles, different airspace. And there's one feature that Kendall actually really likes in the FPL box. You want to talk about it?
Yeah, so earlier you guys had asked about the pack feature. We just wanted to say again, that creates that envelope about 25 nautical miles on either side of your en route course. So 50-mile radius overall. So pack includes all the METARs, TAFs, NOTAMs, segments, airmets. And tapping pack is that suitcase right there. You can see with an exclamation point because it's informing me, hey, like you have not packed for this trip. And right here at the top, you can kind of see that gray, kind of almost cloud looking outline from the flight plan that I have on it here. And you can also see all the fuel prices and everything else that it has. If you tap pack right here, it'll start to download all of our different features for that. And I'm going to go ahead and just hit close on that. And then one other quick tip, just because I did see Austin do this earlier and I did learn this basically right when I started working for ForeFlight, and I love it, is if you use 3 fingers and say, for instance, we have zoomed in super close and we moved our whole route of flight out of view. If you tap using 3 fingers on our map, it will pull our flight plan perfectly into view in the center of the map. So fun one for me. I did not know how simple that was.
It's a cool feature. It's great to show it to people it shows.
Oh, yeah.
I want to mention one other thing I learned pretty recently, that if you pack maybe the night before your flight, it'll download all the charts and things like that. But when you're about to go fly, pack again and it will update things like the latest weather data, but you've already got the bulk of your data if you don't have those charts downloaded.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great.
Always a good thing to have. Austin, do you want to send that over to the flights page for me?
Yeah, so we're going to, from the maps page, we got a profile view, all good to go. We're going to select this little box with the arrow coming up the top, and send to and flights, and that will move it over to our flights tab, and Ken will pick it up from here and show you how to brief this thing.
Awesome. So looking at our flights page, we got that down here at the bottom again. You can select flights. On the left side, you have a selection of all the different flights maybe you've had in the past and also what you're currently looking at. So you can see that the current flight is highlighted on the side there. So that's why we have all this information on the right-hand side. So on the right-hand side, we have things like distance, ETA again, much similar to the flight plan box that we saw on the maps page. As you kind of look down, you can see things like our nav log, our briefing, and then departure and destination. So what we're going to kind of look at here is also at the top, we have this plus sign. So this plus sign is if, we didn't want to plan our flight on the maps page. We already know where we're going. We're just going to go ahead and plan it right here on the flights page. So I'm going to say I'm going to go out of Austin instead. And then I'm going to go over to Lockhart and I'm going to go grab Austin. So I can go ahead and select that here at the flights page. And it's already telling me, hey, like your altitude's just a hair high. So I'll select 3,000. So that way we're not getting...
hop down a Lockhart.
It's a very short part. So that way I'll select that. And you can always plan a flight here on the flights page. But we'll go back to that original flight that Austin had planned for us. And I can do a quick briefing here by tapping this green cloud on the briefing page. So as this kind of generates here for just a second, I want to talk about how we have two different types of briefings. We have a graphical HTML briefing, and we also have a graphical PDF briefing. You can change the type of briefing that you're viewing by going back to that more in settings that I showed you at the beginning of this webinar. For right now, we're not going to go through this entire briefing. It's not super relevant for what we're looking at here today, but just to let y'all know, it does go through airmet, segments, turbulence, all of these PIREPs, and I'm going to kind of skim through here just to kind of show you for the surface analysis chart, for instance. I know this is kind of small if you're looking at it over here on the right-hand side. We can tap to select that, make it bigger, zoom in and out, so it makes it a little bit easier for everybody to see. I can tap briefing back up here on the top left. And then we'll scoot over to METARs really quick. As you can see, it does have our flight projected over there on the map. And as you scroll down, we currently have the raw data right there for any of the METARs that are relevant for our flight today. What's great about that is me as an instructor, I love to give my students a hard time, make sure they can still, read METARs without some assistance there. So I'd make them go through that themselves. And then to double check their work, up here at the top left, we can hit plain text turn on. So that way we can kind of go through that ourselves and see what's different. And just so we don't have to go through the whole briefing today for our webinar, I'm going to hit back up here at the top. And we'll talk about filing for a second. So proceed to file is down here on the right-hand corner. One of the biggest things for this is currently ForeFlight supports filing, not worldwide, but in the US, Canada, Europe, and the Caribbean. So just keep that in mind whenever you're flying with us. And then as we file, whether it be VFR or IFR, we do have the capability, as long as you're connected to internet, to activate, amend, or cancel these flight plans. But please be aware that depending on which ATC facility that you are near and filing with, they do have their own rules about all these amendments or cancellations. So keep that in mind and up to date. And we also have a filing guide back in documents like Austin showed you. Yep. We got to keep that going here. Keep it rolling. Back in documents. So if you have any questions about those activations, amendments, that we can go back in there and check those out. Awesome.
Cool. So we got our flight briefed. I'm going to go over to the checklist now. So if you go back to my screen, we're going to tap more. And let's go to checklist there on the right-hand side. And so now I've loaded these up. You might have to add them on your device if you're not seeing them, but we have the I'm Safe checklist, a passenger brief, and an EFB pre-flight. I think these are very valuable checklists to go through. As we bring EFBs into the cockpit now, it's very important that they're actually prepped and ready to go. So make sure they're charged. You have your data downloaded. Do you have a backup battery? I carry, it's a little Anchor battery pack, and it's great. Just things like that, making sure you're prepared. So let's add our 172. So tap that plus sign, do 172, and we'll go find our Sierra model. We're not flying a G1000. You can look up by your tail number, but just for today's purpose, we're going to add that in. And so you can carry your iPad with you as you're doing your pre-flight check and just tap check as you go. So you got your POH, weight balance, come on, park your brake, all the good stuff right here. And you can jump around to different parts of the checklist, verify that the checklist is complete, you're ready to go, and you're ready for the flight. While we're here talking about pre-flight stuff, I want to talk about some ADS-B connection. So we're going to talk today about our Sentry. There's different receivers that you connect into ForeFlight. I fly with the Sentry, and it's just a little receiver box. It'll provide you GPS, ADS-B weather, traffic, AHRS data, and it has a built-in carbon monoxide detector, which is really awesome to have in flight. But with the ADS-B in flight, will give you traffic and weather. So traffic, if you are flying along, you can pick up ADS-B out targets, and those will display right there on the maps page for you. You can also get in-flight weather. Now, I got to mention here, we get a lot of questions about this, and I see pilots come up and they say, well, why do I not get ADS-B weather while I'm on the ground? Well, you have to have a clear line of sight of an ADS-B tower. So I fly at a Lockhart, usually about 500 feet. AGL is when I'll pick up an ADS-B signal. And that'll give me the weather and traffic, everything that I need. It's a really small receiver. It's great to have in the cockpit. It's great information to have. Highly recommend it. So we've done our flight up to Fredericksburg. We briefed it, packed it. It was great. Had a great time. What do we do now? We got to log this thing and look at our track log.
Yeah, so I'll take it back over for track logs and logbook. So I'm currently on the track logs page. If you guys do not see that, we'll tap more on the bottom right over here. And then track logs would be over here on this lineup. So I'm going to tap track logs again. So Currently, I have a few different random track logs that we've done in a simulator in here, so they kind of look a little bit of a mess, so I apologize for that. But the great thing that we want to talk about with track logs is that they can be done if you are on an aircraft or connected to a device like Austin had for the Century. So as we kind of go through here with our track logs, down at the bottom, we also have a layer selector for our track logs. So seeing altitude and speed, I'm going to tap for this layer selector. I can always choose if I want to do pitch and bank or anything that's different than this. I don't have a lot of going on with these track logs for the simulator.
I was going to say, I actually just pulled up a track log on my iPad over here with the Century Plus.
I would love that.
So here, if we want to take a look at it on the screen, you can kind of tell me what you want me to do.
So if you want to hit that layer selector down there at the bottom, we can see a couple of different altitudes and speeds. You can also, let's say, pitch or anything else. For the Century Plus, we have that G load factor in there, which is fantastic. So you could also pick your G load. It looks like you have flown with that recently. We love to see it. One of the other options is if you select out of the layer selector and tap edit over there at the corner. So if you move either one of those sides of the blue, you can actually edit your track log. I know every once in a while somebody says, hey, it's picked me up driving home. You can actually edit the portion out that you drove home in, and that will not delete any portion that you have. Say, for instance, you want to look back at how you drove home that day. You can actually pull that back up and edit your track log to originally keep that again. So it never permanently deletes anything that you edit out of your track log.
And we ended up taxiing for quite a while in Scottsdale before we took off on this flight. So I can go ahead and just drag it all the way back here, and it's going to save me. It's going to be able to show me significantly more of the information from the flight.
Exactly. So he can go ahead and tap done there to finish that editing process. So another thing that's always great is making sure that your track log is running. So over here on the maps page, down at the bottom, you can see that record button. So anytime we want to make sure that track log is recording, we can actually hit record. You can see that start to count upwards. Currently, we are not flying anywhere, so that's not going to do anything for me. But just so y'all know, that's how you can know if your track log is currently running. Next, we can send any of our track logs over to the logbook. So up here at the very, very top, we have another send to button, much like you see on maps and anywhere else. I'm going to go ahead and hit the send to, and we'll send that over here to Kindle with the Logbook team. So right off the bat, it will change the date. So say, for instance, you're kind of updating your logbook to anything that you've had in the previous years, and anything that you've had a track log with, you just want to keep that going. So as you can see, the date is for January 7th of 2022, when this was originally messed with. And it will also keep track of the to and from that you had on there, as well as the tail number that you were flying in. So the great thing about that is over here on the side, you can actually see two drafts and requests. This is automatically done. We have draft entry creation and logbook along with different settings. So I'm scrolling over here on the left-hand side all the way to the bottom where we have a menu. So at the very bottom of the menu is settings. I'll select that. And then you have draft entry creation under general. So if I tap draft entry creation, you can see that track log is enabled, meaning that anytime that a track log is created on this device, it will show like it does up here at the top as a draft and request. You can do the same thing for any filed flight plans, or even just a flight that you created on the maps page that you just don't want to type fully out for your logbook. The other important thing to note is for any of these drafts and requests that we have right here is to make sure that you go through anything that's in here and confirm that all this information is correct. Because as Jay mentioned earlier, if there is any portion of the flight where you're like, hey, we just hung out on the ground for a while and we picked up that whole time we were sitting there and the plane wasn't even on yet. So this was not flight time. We want to make sure that we do track that or check that in the actual draft itself. And lastly, if you want to create an entry right off the bat, just new and has nothing to do with track logs or filed flight plans, is you have this plus sign up here at the top. So I'm going to tap the plus sign, and the options are to return to an entry or create a new entry. I'll go ahead and hit create a new entry. It'll start with the date as it is today. It'll suggest an aircraft that I most recently flown and from an airport that I most recently logged. So As this goes along, you can fill out all this information. So the to and from, any airports that you happen to land at in between, your total times, any other flight time that you had during that. It will automatically guess any distance that you flew during this flight, and you can add toggles for takeoffs and landings, approaches, or any train dual given. Down here at the bottom, we do have the option to have your instructor sign your logbook right there with you if you happen to be still sitting in the FBO, wherever you happen to be as they fill out your logbook, or you can always send the request to their email by requesting the signature and whoever your instructor's email is that is connected to their ForeFlight or otherwise. And lastly, we'll talk about over here on the other side of logbook on the left-hand side, we do have currency summaries. So currency summaries are for your general takeoffs and landings. Are you allowed to carry passengers? Any of your nighttime settings, IFR, or even just your medical. So if you want to keep track of your medical alerts or CFIs, that can all be uploaded once again using this menu within Logbook itself for qualifications or anything else. You can add those certificates. And I think Jay is going to chat with y'all about some of our Pro Plus and performance features. So if these are the plans that you guys are kind of interested in, he's going to give you a little more information.
Absolutely. Thanks, Kendall. Obviously, I know many of you are on our Basic Plus subscription plan, but we also have a lot of new Pro and Performance customers as well. So we want to make sure that you are able to get the full use out of your account. So I just want to quickly run through what a few of these features are. You've heard a couple of them mentioned, like this one, synthetic vision. This is a screenshot showing it in flight, actually from that flight in Scottsdale that we showed the track log of a moment ago. Since we were connected to a Sentry Plus, you can see that there are traffic targets, and we actually had traffic nearby, so we got that alert in synthetic vision during the flight. This can be enabled on the Maps tab. If you look at the two bright blue icons just left of center, it's the left one there. And behind that traffic alert is the AHARS information that Austin was mentioning that is also a great backup to have with you. Another feature on Pro Plus plans and above is our Hazard Advisor. This is enabled by using the map layer selector at the top left there, where it currently says Aero and Hazard, since my aeronautical layer is turned on with Hazard Advisor. This is really helpful if you fly anywhere near terrain. You can use the altitude slider at the bottom right. You can see where it says 10,000 feet. That's showing me where all the terrain would be around my flight at that altitude. And you can drag that up and down as you're planning your flight to make sure that you are selecting a safe altitude. Next, also in Pro Plus and above, we have our georeference plates and airport diagrams. This is really useful. You can georeference you can georeference FAA charts. You can georeference if you have Jeppesen charts on the on the Maps tab. The last, Kendall, go ahead.
I was going to say, for georeferencing charts, when I got ForeFlight before starting to work here, that was one of the whole reasons why I got Pro Plus to begin with, is I got Pro Plus for the georeferencing plates. You can also put any of the plates that you have on the map. So let's see, I have a plate right here for Austin Bergstrom. Up here in the Send To button on the top right, we can actually send that to the map, and you can see that projected on here. You can kind of tell, you can see a little bit of the background features on the map itself. So you can actually change how much of the plate, or this taxi diagram, for instance, on the map itself. So I would say for Pro Plus, that is hands down my favorite feature easily, especially in unfamiliar areas. So
absolutely. That's super great. The last Pro Plus feature I'll mention is Profile View, which Austin demoed earlier. In Pro Plus, you will get, you can see airspace and terrain. So you can see here, we're avoiding that light blue at the top is class Bravo. So we're able to use Profile View to figure out our initial altitude, and then figure out when we want to climb in flight. And then moving forward, a few features that are performance only. Whenever you are setting up your aircraft, we have a lot of performance profiles that are already pre-configured using the POH for this 172 Sierra model here. There are several cruise profiles. Different aircraft contain also multiple climb and descent profiles as well. We also have a feature called Dynamic Winds here. You can see it's playing here in the background. This gives you a really great view of what winds are at any altitude in the world. You can see here we're at Whitman Regional Airport, where many of us attend Oshkosh every year. But in just a minute, you'll see how this feature is really beneficial to get a view of the winds worldwide. And this video is playing a little slow here. I apologize for that. But you can see that the speeds are color coded. So where it's, yellow, orange, and red is where you're going to find higher speeds. And the greens, blues, and pinks are lower wind speeds. Next, we'll talk about 3D airports and routes really quickly. This lets you, after you plan a flight, you can familiarize yourself with the route. You can look at what any obstacles are around there. You can see the yellow and blue obstacles off in the distance, red and yellow obstacles off in the distance. I need to figure out what my colors are. And that can be really useful. In that 3D view, you can also view forecast weather. And that is a powerful tool as well. So you can see here, this shows our icing layer along our route. And so we may want to change plans if we know we're going to fly into icing. Yes.
Leading into 3D view as well, you can also use this on the airports page. So right now you can see that I happen to be on Greensboro. This is the airport where I got my private. And at the top right, you can see 3D view that's right here. So what's so cool about this is you can actually turn on the night down here at the bottom right. So this turns on all of the lights. And I can tell y'all right now, wherever the beacon is hanging out, that is not how bright it is. It's actually horrible. But you can line up for runway 5 left. So you can actually see how all of the approach lights will look, as well as how the runway will look over top. And this is for any of the runways that we have featured on here. So you can also see any of the lights that you have on the background. It does also feature the layer selector, like he was talking about, for traffic and different obstacles. So that's what all these lights are here in the background. But I do think that that is so cool and just a great feature, especially for night flying, if any of you guys out there are just avid night flyers.
Absolutely. That's really great. We did get one question in while we were going through these features and said, if I wanted to upgrade to a higher plan, do I get charged for that full plan, or will my account be prorated? The answer is the account will be prorated. So you're not going to lose any money. We'll make sure that that every dollar you send us, we'll apply to your account.
But it does renew your account for the next year. So say, for instance, I just purchased an account or got an account for Christmas. And I'm like, I just want to upgrade for right now to a Performance Plus account. So if you go in there, we will prorate yours, prorate whatever's currently left on your account. But not only that, it will renew your account until February, say 22nd, until next year. So it will be for a full year again, just so y'all are aware.
That's super helpful. All right. The last big topic we have for today is some tips and tricks. So which one of you guys is first?
I'll take it away.
Awesome.
So,
all right.
So my favorite one, we'll show you real fast, is user waypoints. And I do a lot of flying around Central Texas. So I have like Enchanted Rock marked, different places I like to fly over. So if you want to do that, I have this route. This is from Georgetown out to Llano. So just take your route and say, like, I want to go down here, Lake Travis. Oh yeah, so you tap your route and drag it down, and you just let go. You can tap in more and save. Oops, sorry. And say like Travis. I'm not sure why that's it.
Do you like?
Lake.
Yeah.
So put in Lake. So it'll keep there saved. And so if I want to, say, leave Georgetown, insert after Georgetown, I'm going to go to Lake. It'll add it to my route right there. And it's really cool. You can do this for, I don't know, if you fly over different properties or wherever you want to put a user waypoint down. And we didn't really touch on too much, but we also have ForeFlight Web you can access. It's plan@foreflight.com. And that doesn't have as many features as the mobile app, but you can create flights on there, brief them, and those flights will sync down to your devices. So you can plan it at home on your laptop, get out to the plane, pull up that flight right there. You have all your maps on there. Your logbook is also accessible on ForeFlight web as well as track logs. So while this one is a lot more focused on mobile, you have that web option as well.
And then one of the features that we didn't talk about but is incredibly useful is on my iPad right here. You can actually see this funky little green line really quick. So this is called breadcrumbs. So while we have track logs, which will show you the aftermath of your flight like we were talking about earlier, we also have breadcrumbs. So breadcrumbs will, when enabled, which you can up here at these settings on the maps page, as well as in more settings. Once enabled, right here under track vector and above map legend, while you are actively flying your flight, you will actually see this little green line depicted on where you're going. As I click on different spots, it'll say the recorded time of where I was, how long it took me to get there, the traveled distance, and the average speed that I was flying. The other fantastic thing about this is it's kind of a backup to track logs. So say, for instance, you forgot to record your track log for your entire flight. You can actually hit that save as track log back here, and it will save that little portion as a track log. Or the other option was to reset, which would mean it would remove it from the maps page. As you can see right here, it is now gone. So once I go into track logs down here at the bottom, you can see that this tiny little flight is now in my track logs page. But I would say breadcrumbs is a fantastic feature for you to actively use during your flights, especially as a backup to other features that we have.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, guys. Whoops, wrong button there. All right. Before we get into some questions here at the end, I just want to point you to a few useful resources. ForeFlight.com/support is where you can find access to all of the pilot's guide that we talked about earlier, as well as all the other guides. We have a logbook guide. We have several more that are really useful. You can find links to all those and answers to many, many popular questions at ForeFlight.com/support. You can also find the pilot's guide directly at ForeFlight.com/pilots-guide. You can register for more webinars and watch past ones at ForeFlight.com/webinars. And there, that includes the weight and balance webinar, the in-depth setup of a weight and balance profile. You can find that one there. You'll also find many, many others. And if your question wasn't answered today, or you have any other question, you can always reach our pilot support team 7 days a week at team@ForeFlight.com. So with that, let's move on to some questions. And Kendall and Austin, whoever, excuse me, let me rephrase this. whoever wants to take this. Kendall, I think it was you that was showing the pack button earlier. Can you show, can you just show us where that is one more time? We had a couple people saying that they missed that.
Oh, yeah. So I'm on the maps page right now, down selected at the bottom here. And then once we click the FLP box up here at the top, the pack feature is right here next to the globe, kind of on the bottom line where you have the distance, the ETA, and everything else. So if you tap that little suitcase, much like you would if you were packing and having a suitcase, this is our pack feature. And that 25 nautical mile around our flight or 50 radius is right there. And also make sure you do tap the blue illuminated pack button like it is right there, because until that is tapped, it has not packed for your flight. So do keep that in mind.
Awesome. Thanks, Kendall. The next one's for Austin, talking about checklists like we did earlier. We had a couple of people asking, again, where to find the EFB checklists, the passenger briefing checklist things. Well, maybe show them where to find the templates as well for the aircraft.
Yeah, so I have the checklist tab right there in that dynamic tab I was talking about earlier. So we tap that. I had these preloaded before, so let me just get rid of that so we can load it back in. So tap the plus sign up there. It'll do search for I'm safe. You can tap that and you can add it there. And that'll add it into your list of different checklists you can choose from. The passenger brief I'd add it. It's the same method. You just search for passenger up in that search bar and add it in. And one thing I didn't mention, and so I'm glad this question was asking, is you can edit these checklists here. So at the top right, you can edit and rearrange things. You can add a new detail item, a new check item. Just right there at the bottom, add in your checklist and make these your own. These are ones that are just by default, but tailor these to how you use them and how you operate with them. And they're great. We have a question.
I was going to say, to add on to that, that plus sign up there at the top, if anybody has a aircraft that perhaps that we don't have on file yet, we can kind of add a basic template for that. So if we tap the plus sign, and you can see basic template, we can select that, or we can build off of any of the other templates that we happen to have on file. So if you have a different Cessna model, anything like that, that's also an option. And it would be the same kind of setup as you'd walk through here. You can try to look up your aircraft or anything else. But yes, you can also use the basic template as kind of a building point for something that we may not have on file.
Awesome. Thanks, Kendall. Got another question here, also for Kendall, our logbook expert. I still like to keep a paper logbook. Is there a way to print out an electronic logbook so that I can then write flights into the paper logbook?
So if you want to write flights into your paper logbook?
If you want to print out your electronic one or get the report of it.
Oh, okay. So if you want to get a report of your logbook, so I'm going to tap the more feature down here at the bottom again, and then I'm going to go to the logbook. So at the very bottom, we have the menus down here. I'm going to tap reports. And so you have a couple of different reports in here. So experience report kind of sums all of your hours, but what we're really kind of looking for is the complete logbook report. So this happens to be whatever logbook is in our current test account. So when you want a generated report of that, here is a complete logbook report. So include your total time, your PIC, night, all of that good stuff. It also includes the I certify these entries and this log are correct. So you would sign those and be able to present them as normal. Not only that, but I'll kind of do a quick run through of any of our other reports on here. So we do have progress reports for like private pilot, instrument, and commercial, condensed reports, which also would show all of your certificates and endorsements. So all of that can be found at the very bottom. I am not sure whichever logbook in here has them. It does not look like it, but any either condensed or complete logbook report would be a great version of that to be able to show, especially for check rides.
Wonderful. Thanks, Kendall. And one last question here that I'll take. We've had a few questions asking if ForeFlight can be connected to flight simulators so that you can use it at home as you're, before you're able to, when you're not in the airplane. The answer is absolutely yes. There are a few steps required. So you can you can search that on foreflight.com/support. We've also done a couple of webinars talking about using several popular software applications for that. And you can find those webinars at foreflight.com/webinars. So we got a lot of great questions today. I'm sorry we couldn't get to them all, but I want to thank you all so much for your time, and thank you so much for attending this webinar, and we'll see you on the next one.